The Pacific moved the way it always did on Friday afternoons in late June, unhurried, indifferent, a long, gray-blue exhale against the Malibu shore. From the terrace of Solano, the restaurant her mother had chosen because the reservation required 3 weeks' notice and the view made every problem look smaller, Lena Carter could see the water. She was not looking at it. She was looking at the menu she had already memorized, holding it at an angle that made conversation difficult, a technique she had perfected over 29 years of family dinners. The table was round her mother's preferred shape, because round tables, Helen Carter liked to say, made everyone feel equal. They did not feel equal. Sophia sat across from Lena with her hair loose and her collarbone catching the light in the particular way that made men pause mid-sentence. She was laughing at something their father had said, and the laugh was the kind that didn't need an audience but always had one. Lena. Her mother's voice, measured. Put the menu down. You always get the salmon. She put it down. The table held 5. Helen and Robert Carter at the elder positions, Sophia between them on one side, Lena on the other, and at the far end, because her father had added him to the dinner without full explanation, sat Daniel Hayes. She had been given 2 lines of context: investor, interested in the sector. He was younger than she had expected, early to mid-30s, dark-haired, wearing a plain white shirt that had not been ironed. Not casually expensive, just plain. He had arrived before anyone else and was drinking water when they all sat down, which was either early or simply not dramatic. He hadn't reached for the wine list. His daughter sat beside him in a booster seat, approximately 5 years old, very focused on a small cloth rabbit she had brought with her. The child's name, Lena would learn later, was Nora. Daniel has been looking at several opportunities in the tech space, Robert said. He had the voice of a man who described things as opportunities without irony. I thought it made sense to introduce him to the family, which meant introduce him to Carter Group, which meant her father wanted something from this dinner that she had not been fully briefed on. Sophia smiled at Daniel the way she smiled at everyone who was being evaluated openly, warmly, with absolute confidence in the outcome. Lena glanced at him. He wasn't smiling back. He was listening to her father, and his expression was the kind that processed information rather than reflected it. The conversation moved the way these dinners moved. Her father talked about market conditions. Her mother asked Sophia about her travel plans. The waiter came and went. Nora, the small daughter, quietly tore a piece of bread into triangles. Lena said very little for the first 20 minutes, which was normal. She was the one at this table who ran an actual company, a startup called Vera Systems, 12 employees, B2B data infrastructure, 3 years of profitability that she had built without Carter Group money, a decision she had made deliberately and paid for emotionally ever since. Her father called it admirable independence. Her mother called it stubborn. Sophia had once said, in a voice calibrated to sound like a compliment, "It's impressive, Lena, very you." "Lena, tell Daniel about Vera," Robert said. She told him. Concisely, without performance. What they built, what problem it solved, where they were going. She watched Daniel's face the way she watched faces in investor meetings for the tells that indicated whether someone was listening or waiting to speak. He was listening. "That's interesting," he said. He said it like he meant it, not like he was being polite. "Daniel's background is infrastructure as well," her father said. Before Hayes Capital, he spent time at 2 enterprise security firms. She looked at Daniel again, something recalibrated. "Which ones?" she asked. He told her. Both names she recognized. Both firms known for doing things correctly, which was not as common as it should have been. The food arrived. The evening softened, and then, somewhere between the appetizers and the main course, in one of those conversational lulls that open suddenly at dinner tables like trap doors, Sophia made an offhand comment about Lena's profile photo on the Vera website. "You should update it," she said, lightly. "You've looked better." Lena laughed. The reflex laugh, the one that made space for the observation without agreeing with it, but also without pushing back. "Well," she said, "my sister's prettier." It was the kind of thing she had said 100 times. Everyone knew how to receive it. Her mother made a small, fond noise. Her father smiled. It moved through the table like weather that had passed many times before. Daniel did not laugh. He set his fork down with a quiet precision, and he looked at her. Not at the table, not at the general direction of her face in the way people look when they are formulating their next sentence. At her, specifically. "I was never looking at her," he said. The table went quiet, not dramatically. Just the air settled. Sophia's smile remained exactly in place, which was the smile she used when something surprised her but she refused to show it. Robert blinked once. Helen reached for her wine. Lena felt something shift in the back of her sternum, a small, structural thing, like a joint that had been misaligned for years, suddenly finding its socket. She had no answer for it, so she said nothing. And Daniel picked his fork back up and turned to Nora and asked her, quietly, whether the rabbit had a name. The child said his name was Gerald. The table exhaled, but the sentence stayed. Sophia was still smiling when the main course arrived. "That was charming," she said, to no one in particular, pitching her voice toward the center of the table the way she did when she wanted credit for generosity without claiming it directly. "You're funny, Daniel." Daniel did not confirm or deny that he had been funny. He asked the waiter for more water. Lena watched him. He moved through the dinner with a kind of economy, no unnecessary motion, no social lubrication. When he spoke, he had already decided what he was going to say. There was something almost structural about the way he occupied space, as if he had long ago stopped performing ease and was simply at ease. She had met investors who performed this quality and ones who possessed it. It was a meaningful distinction. "We wanted to talk to you about something," her father said, pivoting with his usual timing the gap between courses, when attention was loose and the wine had done its first quiet work. "Carter Group is considering a strategic alignment with Vera. We think there's real value in bringing the platforms together." Lena's water glass was halfway to her mouth. She set it down. "What kind of alignment?" "A merger structure," he said. "Clean, straightforward. Benefits both sides." Sophia leaned forward slightly. "It would give Vera access to Carter Group's distribution network, the legal infrastructure, client relationships going back 15 years. You'd keep your role, obviously. We're not suggesting anything that disrupts what you've built." The words were arranged beautifully. Every sentence a cushion. Lena nodded, slowly, in the way she nodded when she was buying time to think. "I'd want to see the terms." "Of course," her mother said. "That's just prudent. I'll have our team send the draft tonight," Robert added. "I think you'll find it's generous." Lena was about to respond when Daniel spoke. "Did you actually read the terms?" he said. She looked at him. "They said they'd send them tonight." "The preliminary terms?" he said. "The ones they would have drafted before proposing a merger at a dinner table." The table shifted, almost imperceptibly. Her father's expression moved not to anger, but to a careful neutrality that was its own kind of signal. "Daniel," Robert said, pleasant and slow, "we're a family business. We do things conversationally first." "I know," Daniel said. He glanced at his daughter, who was rearranging bread pieces with great seriousness, and then back at Robert. "I'm only asking whether Lena has seen a term sheet before tonight." Lena had not. She had been invited to a family dinner and been handed, somewhere between the appetizers and the main course, the beginning of a negotiation she had not prepared for. "No," she said. "I haven't." Daniel nodded once, as though this had confirmed something he already suspected, and returned to his food. Sophia laughed softly. "We wouldn't move without Lena's full review. That goes without saying." It had, in fact, gone without saying. It had gone without being said at all until Daniel made the gap visible. The dinner moved on. Her father talked to Daniel about the broader market. Her mother asked Nora whether she wanted dessert. Sophia caught Lena's eye across the table and offered a small, private smile. The one that said, "Don't overthink this, I'm on your side." Lena smiled back because she had been smiling back at that smile for 29 years. But something in her was calculating now, running numbers she hadn't been running an hour ago. When the evening ended and they stood on the restaurant's front steps in the cooling June air, Daniel lingered slightly as the family said their goodbyes. Nora held Gerald the rabbit against her chest and leaned into her father's leg with the full, sleepy weight of a child at the end of a long day. As Lena turned to find her car, Daniel said, quietly, "Read every word before you sign anything." She paused. "I always do," she said. He looked at her with an expression she could not fully categorize. Not skepticism, not approval. Something more patient than either. "Then you'll see it," he said. And he walked Nora to the car. She stood on the steps for a moment after he left. The ocean still moving behind the restaurant. Indifferent. Unhurried. She drove home and opened her laptop before she had taken off her coat. The term sheet arrived at 11:47 that night. It was 42 pages, which was not unusual. Most merger agreements ran long, but the architecture of a document told you things before you read the clauses, the way a building's entrance told you whether it expected you to feel small or welcome. This one opened with 3 pages of Carter Group's history. Lena made coffee and read every word. By 1 in the morning, she had circled 6 clauses in blue ink and written a single question at the top of the first page. By 2, she had her answer. The equity structure was layered in a way that would dilute her ownership to below 30% within 18 months of signing. Triggered automatically if Vera missed revenue targets that were, she now saw, set at a threshold 12% above her current growth rate. Not impossible to hit, but not what her projections supported without significant capital infusion capital that Carter Group would provide, at terms that would carry additional dilution attached. The CEO provision was buried in Section 14. Carter Group retained the right to recommend changes to executive leadership in the event of 2 consecutive quarters below target. The language was soft. The mechanism was not. There was a non-compete clause that would prevent her from founding or joining any company in the data infrastructure space for 5 years post-termination. She read it a second time to make sure she had read it correctly. She had. She sat in her kitchen with the marked pages spread across the table and thought about the dinner, the light on the water, her father's comfortable voice, her mother's careful warmth, Sophia's smile, the way the proposal had arrived between courses, in the space between one thing and another, when her attention had been on the surface of the evening, rather than beneath it. We wouldn't move without Lena's full review. She pulled out her phone and searched for Daniel Hayes. His professional profile was spare. Hayes Capital, founded 6 years ago. Prior positions at Meridian Security Infrastructure and Lark Systems, the 2 firms he had named. No long biography. A photograph where he was looking slightly off camera, as if the photographer had asked him to look at the lens and he had declined. She clicked his contact page. She did not message him. Not at 2 in the morning, but she kept the tab open. At 9 the next morning, she forwarded the term sheet to her attorney and wrote, "I need your read by end of day. Flag everything that touches control." At 9:15, she received a text from a number she didn't recognize. "Hayes, if you want to talk through what you found, I'm available this morning." She stared at the screen. Then typed, "How did you get this number?" Your father's assistant included everyone on the dinner confirmation email. Reply all. She almost laughed. Almost. "Coffee at 11, she wrote back. "You pick the place." He picked a coffee shop 3 blocks from her office, a small, unremarkable place with good light and no aesthetic pretension. When she arrived, he was already there. Nora absent. A black coffee in front of him. She sat down. Put the term sheet on the table. "This isn't a merger," she said. "No," he agreed. "It isn't. It's a structured acquisition with a gentleness problem." He looked at her steadily. "That's exactly what it is." She leaned back. "Why did you come to that dinner?" "Your father asked me." Why did you say what you said at the table? About the terms? He was quiet for a moment. Outside, someone passed on a bicycle. A dog went by on a leash, interested in everything. Because you were about to walk into something you hadn't seen coming, he said. And no one at the table was going to tell you. She absorbed this. They're not helping you, he said, quiet and factual. They're positioning you. She had known this somewhere, at some level below the language she'd been using for it. The family loyalty, the warmth at the dinner table. Sophia's smile, she had been filing all of it under a category called complicated, rather than the category it actually belonged to. She took her coffee. What do you get out of this? Nothing, he said. I'm not a party to their deal. Then why are you here? He thought about this for a moment longer than she expected. Because you asked, he said. Sophia came to the Vera office on Tuesday. She did not call ahead. This was deliberate. Lena recognized it as the move. It was only after Sophia was already standing in the reception area with a coffee from the place on the corner, offering it with both hands like an ambassador bearing tribute. I thought I'd bring you lunch, Sophia said. Or coffee. I wasn't sure which. Lena accepted the coffee. They sat in the small conference room with the glass walls. Vera's office was modest and functional, nothing like the Carter Group floors in Century City, and Sophia looked around with an expression that was either admiring or calculating, or both. I love what you've done with this space, she said. Lena waited. I wanted to talk to you about the agreement, Sophia said. She set her own cup down gently. I know it's a lot of pages. Legal always overdoes it, but I want you to know the intent. From the family's perspective, we want Vera to succeed. We want to give it every resource we have. We're not trying to take anything from you, she said with a warmth that made it sound like a promise. The CEO provision, Lena said. A small pause. Imperceptible, if you didn't know where to look. That's just standard protective language, Sophia said. Every investor agreement has something like it. It protects everyone, including you, honestly. If the company ever hit a rough patch and you needed the board's support to make changes. She said it with such measured reassurance that for a moment Lena almost nodded. Almost. Standard protective language doesn't include 5-year non-competes, Lena said. Sophia smiled, gentle, unperturbed. We can talk about modifying that. We'd need to remove it. There's room to negotiate. That's what this conversation is. The afternoon light came through the glass wall and caught the dust motes floating between them. Small, aimless things suspended in good light. I just want what's best for you, Sophia had been saying, in one form or another, for as long as Lena could remember. She had said it when she advised Lena not to take the scholarship to the engineering program out of state. You'd be so far from us. She had said it when Lena's first startup failed. Maybe this just isn't the right fit for you. She had said it when Lena founded Vera. Are you sure you don't want to come in through Carter Group? It would be easier. Every sentence a cushion. Every cushion, Lena now understood, part of the same furniture arrangement. She thought of Daniel's voice in the coffee shop. Not helping you. Positioning you. I'm going to need more time with the terms, Lena said. Of course, Sophia said. Take the time you need. She reached across the table and touched Lena's hand, briefly, warm. We're family. That doesn't change. After she left, Lena sat in the conference room alone for a long moment. Then she called her attorney. That evening, her phone lit up with a text from Daniel. How are you doing? 3 words. Matter of fact. Not how did it go or what happened, just the simpler question. She answered honestly, thinking. He sent back a single period, which was, she thought, the correct response. 2 days later, the rumors started. She found out the way she found out most things in her industry indirectly, through a chain of messages from people who cared about her and were embarrassed to be delivering the information. A financial journalist had been calling her investors. A story was forming somewhere about Vera's stability, its runway, questions about its financial health. The framing was speculative but pointed. Nothing had been published yet. But the calls were happening. She pulled up Daniel's number. "Are you aware of any concerns circulating about Vera in the investment community?" she wrote. He called her within 2 minutes. "Yes," he said. "I heard yesterday. I was trying to find out more before I told you." "What have you heard?" "That there's a narrative forming. Questions about your runway, your client retention numbers, leadership stability." She sat very still. "None of that reflects actual data." "I know," he said. "I checked." She absorbed this. He had checked, without being asked. "Where is it coming from?" she said, a beat of silence, carefully measured. "I have a theory," he said, "but I need another day to confirm it." The first call came from Marcus Webb, Vera's second-largest investor, at 8 on Wednesday morning. "I'm not worried," Marcus said, in the tone of a man who was worried. "But I've been getting questions from my LPs about some of the things circulating online. I want to understand the current picture before anyone asks me something I can't answer." She gave him the current picture. Every number. Transparent, precise, unhurried. He seemed reassured. But he asked to schedule a full review meeting for the following week. Then Nina Hargrove called. Then Patrice Owens. 3 calls by noon, all from investors who were not worried in the same calibrated way that suggested they were being asked the same questions from the same source. Between calls, she walked through Vera's small, open office and watched her team work. 12 people, most of them under 35. Most of them having turned down more comfortable positions at larger firms because they had believed in what she was building. They were focused this morning, heads down, doing the work. No one had visibly alarmed them yet. She did not alarm them. She went back to her office and opened a spreadsheet and began building a timeline of when the inquiries had started and what they had in common. At 2 in the afternoon, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. "Miss Carter." A voice she didn't recognize, professional. Practiced. "I'm calling on behalf of a media outlet looking into the financial position of several mid-sized tech companies. We've received information suggesting Vera Systems may be." "Stop," she said. "What outlet?" "A beat." "I'm not in a position to." "Then I'm not in a position to comment." She ended the call. She sat with her hands flat on the desk. Her father called at 3:30. His voice was warm, unhurried. The voice of someone delivering news they had been waiting to deliver. "I heard some murmurs about Vera," he said. "Nothing serious, I'm sure. But these things have momentum if you don't address them. The offer is still open. If you sign by Friday, we can have a press release out by Monday morning that reframes the whole narrative." Carter Group, standing behind Vera, that's a strong message. She held the phone very still. "Dad," she said. "Where did the murmurs start?" "Markets are noisy," he said. "You know that." "I know that," she agreed. "I also know the calls to my investors all started within a 48-hour window, and the questions they're being asked are specific enough to have come from someone with internal knowledge." Silence on the line. Not long a second, maybe 2, but in her father's silences, a second was informative. "I just want you protected," he said. "I know," she said. She ended the call. Daniel sent her a message at 5. "I need to show you something. Can you meet tonight?" She drove to his building, an apartment in Santa Monica, clean and functional, bookshelves visible through the large windows from the parking level. He buzzed her up. Nora was already in bed, the apartment quiet. Gerald, the rabbit, visible on a small chair by the hallway. He opened his laptop on the kitchen table without preamble and turned the screen toward her. It was a message thread, a chain of communications between a PR consultancy and what appeared to be a Carter Group subsidiary, a holding entity she recognized from the term sheet. The PR firm had been retained 3 weeks earlier. Their brief plainly stated, "Build a narrative around leadership concerns at mid-market tech targets ahead of strategic acquisition." 3 weeks ago, before the dinner, before the merger proposal. She read it twice. The operational account for Vera's primary banking relationship had received 2 requests for information audits in the past week. Routine in appearance. coming when she traced the request chain from a third-party compliance firm that was also retained by Carter Group. Her bank had not yet acted, but the mechanism was in motion. "If they freeze the operational account," she said. "You can't make payroll," he said, "and then the narrative writes itself." She sat with this for a moment. The kitchen was quiet. A clock somewhere in the apartment marked the silence. "They built the trap before they invited me to dinner," she said. "Yes," he said. She did not break down the way people broke down in films. No single dramatic fracture, no collapse. It was quieter than that. She sat at the kitchen table for a long time after Daniel showed her the documents, and at some point the silence around them shifted from working silence to something different. He made tea without asking and set it beside her and sat back down. "I think," she said finally, and then stopped. He waited. "I think I'm not good enough to run this alone." She heard herself say it, heard the specific weight of it, the years compressed into the sentence. Every dinner where she had been the smart one, in a tone that separated smart from everything else. Every meeting where she had over-prepared to compensate for something she could never quite name. Every time she had said "my sister's prettier" and meant something underneath it that she'd never let herself examine directly. Daniel was quiet for a long moment after she spoke. "Or maybe," he said, "they need you to believe that." She looked at him. "They've been managing your self-assessment for a long time," he said. Not with accusation or diagnosis, but the same way he stated every other fact cleanly, without ornament. A person who believes she can't run her company without family support will sign documents a person who trusts herself wouldn't touch. She felt something move in her chest, not the soft feeling, not the relief, but something structural, like a load-bearing wall being recalibrated. "The company is good," he said. "The numbers are real. I verified them independently. There's no financial crisis at Vera. There's a manufactured perception of one." "I know," she said, "but you've been sitting here for 20 minutes wondering if some part of it is true." She had been. She was. "That's what I mean," he said. She drank the tea. It was plain and slightly too hot, which was the right kind of tea for this particular moment. "I want to see all of it," she said. "Every piece of documentation, the PR brief, the compliance requests, anything traceable back to Carter Group. I've been building that file for 5 days." She looked at him. "Why?" He considered the question with the same patience he brought to everything. "Because I watched your face at that dinner when they put the proposal on the table. You went very still. Most people go still because they're deciding how to respond. You went still because you were recalculating something you'd already decided." She waited. "I know what it looks like," he said, "when someone is trying to hold themselves together in a room full of people who don't see them doing it." The apartment was quiet. From down the hall, she could hear the very faint sound of a child breathing in sleep, the particular undisturbed rhythm of someone who had no reason not to trust the world tonight. "Your daughter?" Lena said. "She's okay? Living here with you full-time?" "Yes," he said. Something in him settled when he said it, a kind of gravity. "Her mother and I separated 2 years ago. Nora's been the constant. She seems very calm. She knows Gerald is in charge," he said. And for the first time in 5 days, Lena laughed genuinely, not the reflex kind. "Okay," she said when the laugh had settled. "Show me everything. We need to document this correctly before we do anything with it." He opened the laptop. They worked until past midnight. By the time she left, they had a file, 6 documents deep, each one verifiable, each one pointing in the same direction. She drove home through empty Santa Monica streets, thinking not about the evidence or the legal strategy or what she would say to her father, but about the sentence he had said before they started working. "They need you to believe that." Past tense. Need. Present tense. She pulled into her driveway and sat in the car for a moment. Then she went inside and slept the first clean sleep she had managed in a week. She called Sophia. Not her father, not the attorney, not a mediator. Sophia directly, at 10 in the morning, and asked her to meet. They met at a place in Brentwood neutral ground, neither of their offices. Sophia arrived looking composed, dressed with the quiet expense that her wardrobe always carried, a coffee ordered before Lena sat down. "I was glad you called," Sophia said. "I've been thinking about you." Lena set her bag on the chair beside her. "I want to talk about what I found." "Of course, if there are terms you want to." "Not the terms," Lena said. "The PR firm, the compliance request to my bank, the investor calls." The shift in Sophia's expression was minimal. A small drawing in, like a shoreline before a wave. "I don't know what you're referring to," she said. "Yes, you do." Sophia looked at her for a long moment. Her coffee cup was halfway to her mouth. She set it down, and then she did something Lena had not expected. She didn't deny it. "I didn't design it to hurt you," she said. The sentence sat between them like something dropped. "You just designed it to acquire my company. I designed it to make the acquisition make sense. For the board, for the family, for the narrative." She said narrative the way Robert said opportunity smoothly, without registering what the word was doing. Vera needed a reason to accept help. "I didn't need help. I needed to be left alone." "You needed resources," Sophia said, steady and certain. "You've been building something real, Lena. We wanted to fold it into something bigger. That's not an insult. It's only not an insult if I wanted that." Sophia looked at her with an expression that was not cruelty, that was the thing that Lena had always found the most disorienting. There was no cruelty in Sophia's face. There was a kind of certainty, bottomless and unexamined, that Lena existed in Sophia's orbit, and that the orbit's center was, without discussion, Sophia. "You were never meant to compete with me," Sophia said. She said it gently. She said it like a kindness. Lena felt the sentence land. Felt it specifically, in the place where 29 years of dinners and comparisons and reflexive self-deprecation had been stored without language. Sophia is easier to love. She had been told this, not in those words, but in every variation of those words that a childhood could accommodate, until the words became structural, became the frame she built herself around. "You've always thought of me as a resource," Lena said. "I've always thought of you as family. Those aren't different things to you." Sophia didn't answer. Not because she disagreed, because she didn't understand the distinction as a problem. Lena sat with that for a moment. The coffee between them steamed. "I'm not signing the agreement," she said. "I'm going to the board with what I found. Carter Group will withdraw the offer, or I'll take the documentation public." "Lena, I'm not angry," she said. And she wasn't not in the way she might have expected. She was something cleaner than angry. She was done. "I understand exactly who you are. I think I've always known. I just needed to say it out loud." She picked up her bag. "I'm not the weaker version of you," she said. "I never was." She left while Sophia was still searching for the sentence that would reframe it. Outside, the morning was bright, characterless California blue. She walked to her car and sat in the driver's seat and took 2 slow breaths. Then she called Daniel. "I talked to her," she said. "How did it go?" She didn't deny it. She just doesn't think it was wrong. A pause. "Are you okay?" She thought about this carefully. "Yes," she said. "I think I actually am." "Good. The file is ready when you are." "I'm ready," she said. The attorney's name was Catherine Marsh, late 40s, former federal prosecutor. The kind of person who read documents the way surgeons read scans, looking for the thing that would kill you. Lena had worked with her on Vera's incorporation and a previous contract dispute. She trusted her entirely. "This is clear," Catherine said, an hour into reviewing the file. "The PR engagement is predatory, positioning ahead of a coercive acquisition. The compliance requests are an attempt to artificially create financial instability to manufacture consent. This isn't just aggressive deal-making. This is actionable." "What's the path?" Lena asked. "We notify Carter Group's legal team, formally give them the opportunity to withdraw before we involve regulators." If they don't withdraw within 72 hours, we file a complaint with the relevant securities oversight bodies and prepare a detailed press briefing. The press briefing goes out regardless, Lena said. Catherine looked at her. Not sensationalized, Lena said. Just accurate. The investors who were called deserve to know what information they were receiving and where it came from. Catherine nodded. I'll draft it alongside the formal notice. Daniel had provided 3 of the 6 documents in the file connections that Lena's own investigators would have taken weeks to build. He had not attended the meeting with Catherine. He had sent the documents over, attached a brief note. Use what's useful. The rest is yours to run. She had read the note twice. There was something in it that was not rescue. It was not the cavalry arriving or the man with better resources sweeping in to solve the problem she had failed to solve. He had given her information because she needed information. The work had been hers. She had needed that, had needed it to be this way, even if she hadn't known she needed it until it was. Her team at Vera did not know the full scope of what was in motion. They knew there had been investor calls, that there was outside pressure, that Lena was managing it. She had met with all 12 of them that morning and been honest without panicking. There's some noise right now. I want you to know it's coming from outside the company. The company is fine. Keep building. The room had been quiet, listening. Then Marcus, her lead engineer, had said, "Do you need any of us to do anything? Keep building," she said again. The formal notice to Carter Group's legal team went out on Thursday morning. Robert called her within 2 hours. His voice had shed its warmth completely, the way a surface sheds water cleanly, without residue. "You're making a mistake," he said. "I'm filing a documented complaint based on documented actions," she said. "I'm not making any characterization beyond what the evidence supports. This damages the family." She held the phone. Outside her office window, the city moved in its ordinary afternoon rhythm cars. Light, the distant sound of construction somewhere on the block. "Dad," she said, "you set this in motion before I even walked into that restaurant." He said nothing. "I'm not doing this to the family," she said. "I'm doing this for Vera." She ended the call. Sophia did not call. That was its own information. Daniel sent a message that evening. "How are you holding up?" She looked at the message and thought about the dinner, the waterfront light, the way he had looked at her when she said, "My sister's prettier." Not as if the observation were a joke, not as if it were charming, as if it were something he had quietly decided, without making a performance of the decision, was not true. "Better than expected," she wrote back. "Nora okay? She's informed me Gerald needs a new outfit." "She's not wrong," Lena typed. "Gerald is a business rabbit now." He sent back 3 small letters. Which, from Daniel Hayes, she had come to understand, was the equivalent of a full laugh. They held the board meeting the following Friday. Lena had requested it. Carter Group, faced with the formal legal notice and a copy of the press briefing that Catherine had prepared, had agreed, their own attorneys advising, she assumed, that engagement was preferable to the alternative. The Carter Group boardroom was on the 32nd floor in Century City, floor-to-ceiling windows facing west, conference table seating 20, half of which was occupied today. Board members, 2 senior Carter Group executives, the family attorneys, and across from them, Lena and Catherine. Her parents were present. Sophia was not. Robert Carter sat at the head of the table with his hands folded, composed in the way of someone who had decided composure was the only remaining card. Lena had worn a plain dark jacket, no jewelry except a watch. She had chosen everything that morning with the same care she chose words deliberately, for what it communicated rather than what it decorated. She began. She went through the documentation methodically, the timeline of the PR engagement, the investor calls, the compliance requests to her bank, the term sheet's structural mechanisms. She spoke without inflection, without accusation, beyond what the facts carried on their own. Catherine had advised her to let the evidence have the emotional weight and keep her own voice clinical. She did this. The board members were quiet in a way that distinguished them from the Carter Group executives, who were performing quiet. The board members were actually listening. When she finished, she said, "Carter Group has 72 hours from Thursday's notice to formally withdraw the acquisition proposal and provide written assurance that the compliance requests have been recalled and the PR engagement terminated. If that doesn't happen, we proceed with the regulatory complaint and press distribution." Robert looked at his attorney. His attorney made a very small motion with his hand that communicated what Lena needed to know. "The proposal can be withdrawn," Robert said. His voice was even. She had never heard her father's voice be anything other than even. "That's a reasonable resolution." "And the other items," Catherine said, "will provide the written assurances," the attorney said. Lena nodded. One of the board members, a woman in her 60s named Gloria Hartwell, who had been on Carter Group's board for 11 years and had always treated Lena with a specific kind of respect that she now understood was because Gloria had seen this before, looked at Lena across the table and said, "Vera Systems is a strong company. We should have treated it as such from the beginning." Lena accepted this. She did not look at her father when she said it. She was looking at Gloria, and then at the window, and the city beyond it, and the specific quality of Friday afternoon light that had been present at the beginning of this and was present now, at a different table, pointing in a different direction. "I'm not the weaker version of anyone," she said. She said it quietly, without drama, the way Daniel said things, because she had learned somewhere over the past 10 days that sentences landed harder when you didn't throw them. The room was silent. Then the Carter Group attorney began arranging papers for signatures, and the meeting moved into its procedural conclusion, and it was done. A week later, Vera's operational account was fully unfrozen. The compliance requests had been formally recalled on Friday afternoon, within hours of the board meeting. The investors who had received the concerned calls had been contacted by Catherine's office with a clear explanation of the situation. Marcus Webb had responded to the explanation with a terse message that contained, Lena thought, more loyalty per word than anything she had been offered at a family dinner in the past decade. "We're not going anywhere," he had written. "Keep building." The office had settled back into itself. There was a particular quality to a team that had been tested and hadn't broken something in the texture of the air, the way people moved through the space. She could feel it without being able to name it precisely. She updated her LinkedIn profile on Wednesday. Not the photograph, she would get a new one taken eventually, when she felt like it, not because her sister had suggested it. Just the title line. Previously, it had read, Founder, Vera Systems. She changed it to Founder and CEO, Vera Systems. A small change, entirely visible only to her. On Thursday, she took the afternoon off, which she almost never did. She walked along the Santa Monica Pier without a destination and bought a coffee from a cart and sat on a bench looking at the water until her thoughts settled into something quiet and navigable. Her phone was in her pocket. She didn't take it out. She thought about what it meant that her first instinct at that dinner had been a joke about her own diminishment. She thought about how many times she had made that joke, and how many people had laughed in a way that wasn't unkind but was accepting, had accepted the joke as true because she had offered it as true, had built a whole social architecture on top of the foundation of it. My sister's prettier. She had been saying it for 15 years. She had been saying it since she was 14 and had finally grown tired of the comparison and decided to own the underside of it before anyone else could assign it to her. It was, she now saw, a brilliant defensive move that had turned into a prison. She finished her coffee. On Friday, she went to Solano for lunch, not with her family. She booked a table for 2 on the terrace, in the afternoon light, because she wanted to see what it felt like to be there without the architecture of obligation around it. Daniel arrived at 12:30 with Nora, who was wearing a backpack shaped like a turtle and had, apparently, brought Gerald along for the occasion, the rabbit tucked under one arm. "You brought Gerald," Lena said. "He asked to come." Nora said, very seriously. Then he's welcome, they ordered. The ocean moved below the terrace. Nora arranged Gerald so that he was facing the water, which Lena thought was the right call. I wanted to thank you, Lena said, when Nora was occupied with a coloring sheet the waiter had produced. You did the work, Daniel said. You gave me a starting point. You'd have found it. Later, she said. After I'd signed. He considered this. Maybe, she looked at him. The same quality of attention she had noticed at the dinner, that particular stillness. The sense that he was fully in the conversation he was in rather than half in the next one. Why did you say it? She said. He knew what she meant. Because you said it like it was true, he said. And it wasn't. You'd known me for 40 minutes. Long enough. She watched the water for a moment. I've been saying it for 15 years, she said. I know, he said. You're going to stop. Not a question. Not a prescription. A prediction made with simple confidence, by someone who had spent the last 10 days watching her make herself exactly who she was. She didn't answer that immediately. She picked up her water glass and looked at the light through it and thought about the sentence and whether she agreed with it, and she found that she did not because he had said it, but because she had arrived at the same conclusion somewhere on that bench by the pier, in the quiet, on a Thursday afternoon when she had finally been still enough to hear what she already knew. Gerald seems to like the view, she said. He's very cosmopolitan, Daniel said. Nora looked up from her coloring. He wants to come back. Then we'll come back, Lena said. The afternoon moved around them, light on the water, the ordinary sounds of the terrace filling in. No one said anything too large. The conversation was easy in the specific way that conversations were easy between people who had already said the hard things and were not pretending they hadn't. At some point, Nora asked Lena whether she had a rabbit. No, she said. I don't. You should get one, Nora said. They're good for thinking. Lena looked at Daniel. He was looking at his daughter with an expression she didn't have a word for, something between full presence and deep gratitude, as if Nora was both the most ordinary thing in the world and a constant surprise. He looked up and caught Lena watching. He didn't look away. She didn't look away. The ocean was there. Underneath everything, the same ocean, the same light, the same Friday afternoon at the end of June. But she was different. She was not the girl at the family dinner, folding herself down to fit the shape the table had made for her. She was not the punchline of a joke she had told about herself so many times it had become biography. She was the person who had found the trap, documented it, walked into the room, and named it in front of everyone who had built it without raising her voice, without apology, without anyone else's permission. She was the CEO of a company she had built from nothing, with 12 people who were still building, with investors who had stayed, with a legal victory she had earned by doing the work. She was a woman who had spent most of her life standing slightly behind where she belonged, and who had simply, finally, stopped. Daniel said something to Nora about ordering. Nora corrected something he'd said with the absolute authority of a 5-year-old. He accepted the correction with complete seriousness. Lena smiled. It was not the dinner table smile, the one she wore for audiences, the one that deflected and preempted and built goodwill as a form of protection. It was the other kind, the kind that didn't have a performance attached to it. The waiter came. They ordered. Nora made a decision about her entree, and then changed her mind and then changed it back, and Daniel waited through all of it with the patience of someone for whom the process of the child deciding was as important as the decision. Lena watched this and felt something quiet and fundamental move through her, not a revelation, because she had had her revelations over the past 10 days and was finished with dramatic recognition. This was smaller than that. This was just here. And yes. And this is what it looks like when someone sees you accurately and stays. She had been standing second for so long that she had forgotten there was another way to stand. She was not standing second now. She was sitting at a table by the ocean on a Friday in late June, in her own life, in the space it actually occupied, not the smaller space she had been handed, not the diminished version she had rehearsed, but the full one, which had always been available, which she had simply not claimed. She would not say my sister's prettier again, not because Sophia was not beautiful she was, but because the sentence had never really been about Sophia. It had been about Lena's own willingness to stand at the edge of herself and describe the edge as the whole. She was done standing at the edge. The afternoon opened around her. The terrace, the water. Daniel's voice asking Nora something about Gerald's preferred dining arrangements. The light, the way it was, golden, flat, completely indifferent to anything except the surface it touched. She did not need to be the most visible person at the table.